Hungary was happy. Hungary was happy to tie. You know, 2-2 and 1-1 before that.
Okay, sure.
You wounded me to the core because I am Scottish. So yes,
I was about to mention that.
So again, my condolences for Scotland, but since you do also represent England, then congratulations to you.
That would be the only time I ever accept congratulations around football in England.
Okay, Trevor.
This is threatening to venture off into very undiplomatic territory here.
Yeah.
We better rein it in very quickly. So as those of you who've been on these calls know, I'm Trevor Williams. You can see Global Atlanta in the background. We're a news publication here in Atlanta focusing on international business. Leah of our team is here. We should say hello to her. She just started the recording, so just make sure you watch what you say if you don't want anything to end up in Global Atlanta. But if you if you do say something throughout the course of the conversation that you don't want recorded or disseminated, please let us know and we'll cut that out on the back end. But because this conversation, as all reframing resilience conversations have been, is designed to be interactive and frank and honest and open. So this is our 12th in the discussion series that we've been working with the Pendleton Group consulting firm on throughout the past year. I think we started maybe a few months after the pandemic began. I think it was April of 2020 that we started the first one. And we're now on number 12. So as we were discussing before some of y'all came on, we'll figure out what this looks like going forward, whether we need to have it as a round table with a virtual element, or if we will continue it virtually. We have had some amazing international guests, and some of you I know are still located in other countries as well. So I do think there's some value to that. We will work that out and figure it out as we go. This session is going to be focused on electric vehicles and economic development. If you joined us last time, you will remember we talked a lot about the renewable energy infrastructure here in Georgia. It was a fascinating conversation. I think we should have some of those same folks back on this call if they end up joining us. But even if not, we have a great range for discussion today. No pun intended with the EV, the EV aspect. But yeah, obviously, Guy's going to tell you a little bit more about the structure of the conversation, but obviously electric vehicles are on everyone's mind, no more than here in Georgia, because we have some major international companies that are supplying some of the parts and batteries and infrastructure that comes with that. But adoption of EVs is only as good as the infrastructure that we have to charge them, right? We can't expand access to the vehicles without having a way to power them. So I think we're going to focus a lot of our discussion on that today and what that looks like. But I'll turn it over right now to Guy to guide us through the ins and outs of the conversation, how we hope it will go. And I think Jorge will provide a few remarks from the Pendleton Group, and then we'll jump in and have everybody talk.
Yeah, let's start with Jorge, and then I will chime in.
Sounds good.
Want a break, Guy? Is that what it is?
Yeah. I mean, 12 times to say the same thing. So,
well, good morning, everybody. For those of you that have not had a pleasure to meet, I'm Jorge Fernandez with the Pendleton Group. So, on behalf of Guy, myself, and the rest of Pendleton, I want to really thank you for spending part of the morning with us discussing topics that is a passion for me, but it's extremely important for our state and our city and our region, which is economic development, resiliency in general. In this particular case, something that like Trevor mentioned, this electrification of the fleet, the implications of that, future of electric vehicles, concerns, etc. But another angle looked into that is, of course, the connectivity to have global connections for all of us here. That's been another constant of this resiliency. It's not just economic development and resiliency, but links to the international community. And again, thank you for those of you that represents that community. The Pendleton Group, for those of you that are not familiar, we're a group of professionals in the economic development field, and we specialize working with communities and organizations and corporations to develop and deploy business and economic development strategy and connectivity globally. Guy and I specifically work, not necessarily to, but most of the time, in that connectivity to the region and to companies at the global marketplace. But you certainly could visit our website, www.pendletonatlanta.com, to learn more about what we do and who we are. And I'll turn it over to Guy.
Great, thanks, Jorge. I think that what we want to develop here is a conversation. There's a lot of people, some very knowledgeable people with us today. And the angles that are important to us is the understanding the relationships between international economic development, the technology and infrastructure behind it. And hopefully we'll, in addition to exchanging ideas and I guess updating each other on what is actually happening from our perspective, I think there's also, we try to add a networking value. So if for some reason you want to follow up, meet with another person in this conversation that you are not connected to, we will gladly make that connection to you. Just send me a note after the conversation who you want to meet with, and we will facilitate that. And with that, I'm passing it on to Trevor.
Cool, thanks, Guy. Yeah, conversation going to be even more important on this one. We generally follow the format of having a few what we call featured speakers, intentionally not calling them panelists because we don't want them talking at you, but we want them to kind of set the stage for the broader conversation. This time we're being more egalitarian or ecumenical or whatever you want to say. We're going to make it more of a round table. I've been informed that we have graduated from the 1 breath rule on introductions to maybe 2 to 2.5 breaths. And I want y'all to just introduce yourselves, tell us where you fit in this whole electric vehicle infrastructure, economic development, international conversation, what your interest is. And I guess, you know about me at this point. I write about this sector a pretty good bit, but more on the automotive side than on the EV side particularly, but have been fascinated to watch new companies coming in from all over the world with various pieces to the EV puzzle. Particularly, we just wrote about a new Dutch company creating charging stations that's coming into the market. So I think there's a lot of momentum in this sector, and looking forward to talking about it. So why don't we start with Jacobus? Just tell us why you're here. 2 breaths, 2.5, and we'll go from there.
Jacobus Boers, Robinson College of Business, Georgia State University. International business is my home department, and working at college level also on all international and global engagement activities. And so there's certainly interesting content, and we want to work around that.
Perfect. Martin Chen from the TECO office here, Taipei Economic and Cultural Office.
Hi, everybody. Now, my name is Martin Chen. I'm with the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Atlanta. We are very pleased to participate in this discussion because, starting from 2008, the first Tesla's electric vehicle Roadster was built in Linkou, Taiwan. So starting from day one, Taiwan is an important supply chain for Tesla up to now. So they are, we have many good company. They are, the Tesla's supplier chain, supplier not only for the California or in Shanghai Gigafactory, but also going with them coming to like Austin. So we are very happy to be invited to join this discussion.
Thank you so much. Yes, and we had an event with Martin's economic minister from Taiwan, and she was really touting the EV sector and how important that's going to be for the future of the country's electronics and manufacturing industry. So that was an exciting one. Ash Miller from the Canadian Council, and I love Ash's. Always love Ash's setup there. It's like I feel like I'm going on Ash's podcast.
One day I'm going to turn that into another gig and make some real money. Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Trevor. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ash Miller. I'm with the Consulate General of Canada here in Atlanta. My official title is Political and Economic Relations. And Trevor, I think you said it best. The best word for the EV market right now is momentum, because we are seeing that across the board in all 6 of our states that we cover. So I'm very, very interested in hearing and what everyone else has to say and contribute this morning. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much. Is it Paula?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. My name is Paula Kaiser, and I'm Congressman Hank Johnson's new legislative director. It's a pleasure to join your roundtable and sit in and hear all these great ideas. So thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks, Paula. We have Justin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Justin Breithart. I'm the Energy Efficient Transportation Manager for the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance. We are a 501c3, and we try to provide a regional perspective based in Atlanta, but we cover the 11 Southeast states from Virginia, Florida, to Louisiana, Arkansas, up to Kentucky. Excited to.
Great, thank you so much. Marylyn? Got to unmute yourself, I'm sorry. Wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if we didn't have to do that.
There we go. Somebody didn't do that, yeah. Professor at Georgia Tech in the School of Public Policy, longstanding interest in the ability of electric vehicles to help improve the resilience of our electricity grid, heading the research agenda for the Georgia Drawdown Project, and electric vehicles are one of our shortlisted, high potential climate solutions. So doing lots of work on what's happening in Georgia around all the counties, rural and urban. Where do we have the best charging infrastructure? Where do we have the greatest needs? And so really pleased to be here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. John Parkerson.
Hello, I'm John Parkerson. Thanks for allowing me to continue in this series. I'm an international business attorney at Hall Booth Smith law firm, also honorary consul general of Hungary. And Hungary's largest industrial sector is automotive, and they're working closely with mostly German companies on developing new EVs. And just to mention, SK Innovation, which we know here in Georgia from its huge investment, is now building its European center in Hungary. So it's a topic I'm very interested in.
Great, thank you so much, John. Andrew Stanton.
Hi, thank you very much, Trevor. Thanks, and thanks to Jorge for inviting us again to this event. So Andrew Stanton, I'm the British Consul General here in Atlanta. Been here about 3 years. Spend a lot of my time trying to advocate for sustainability. The UK is hosting the International Climate Change Conference at the end of this year. For those of you who don't know, the United Kingdom is big domestically on the green recovery, and we're big internationally on how do we make the planet more sustainable. See that electric vehicles and all that are so important in the Southeast. Sometimes have difficulty engaging with politicians on the requirement to tackle climate change, but their eyes light up when you move the discussion on to jobs, economic growth and competitiveness, and really think that the Southeast has such a wonderful opportunity to be at the forefront of all the EV manufacturing, as you're already seeing through battery production, through electric vehicles here. And think that if it was me, the Southeast should become the EV capital of the United States. And more than happy to have a discussion about any of that and how the UK can help. I'm so enthusiastic about this as an economic development opportunity, particularly a transatlantic one. Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, and we should note Scotland's hosting the UN Climate Change Conference later in the year too. Agnihotri?
Yeah, Thanks, Trevor. Hi, good morning. I'm Agnihotri. I'm an international business consultant with the focus on India, and also run a small manufacturing company, advanced manufacturing company. So I have a general interest in EVs in this area. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Vern Grush.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. And thanks Global Atlanta for having me back again for the 4th or 5th time. Really appreciate these conversations. My work mostly is in the area of ISO standards for the management of robotic vehicles. So these are vehicles that are for passengers, passenger taxis, passenger shuttles, and in particular also for goods delivery, but on the sidewalk. These are robots in this case for mostly for delivery, but also for other activities. The assumption is that all of these will be electric. That's just an assumption, or certainly the majority will be. So electric vehicles are very important to this activity, but I want to stress that how we use these electric vehicles, in other words, whether we use them in sort of very efficient services, which is what the ISO standard is about, or whether we all buy our own and we continue the ownership model of vehicles. That's really the area that I'm most concerned in, that we design, use, and deploy electric vehicles in ways that are optimized for both passengers and goods movement, and not specifically and only toward ownership of those vehicles. That's my thrust for the past years. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Sergio?
Good morning, everyone. Sergey Dominguez, Managing Director of Georgia's Europe office in Munich. Obviously, EV, e-mobility, very important to us, especially in our recruitment efforts. One of the major events here this year will be the IAA Passenger Vehicle Show that will move from Frankfurt to Munich. Great emphasis on e-mobility. I can tell you that 2 years ago, when this trade show was held in Frankfurt, that the EV companies didn't show up. They didn't want to be affiliated to the, to the traditional, polluting OEMs that were in attendance. It was quite a controversial topic simply because, Tesla didn't show up. So it was very much focused on the German OEMs, the VWs, the BMWs, the Daimlers of the world. In any event, this office is very much centered in recruitment in this area, not only for battery production, but we're also looking for storage, urban air mobility, and what that entails. And so our outreach and our coverage is Europe-wide, everything from charging stations to batteries to the software to the software that will, in essence, optimize and extend those ranges. So a big focus for us, not one that is only centered on automotive, but that spills over into other areas like aerospace, for example, and everything else that comes along with it: advanced materials and composites, lightweight construction. So it's something that we have, we continue to address and pivot to it, so that we're better positioned to recruit and to, in essence, present our value proposition given the recent activity and announcements that we've had in Georgia.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. How about Steve?
Okay, so I am a retired dentist. I was a candidate for the Georgia Public Service Commission, and it was working on looking at alternative fuels beginning at a time in about 2007 when the OPEC countries had their foot on the neck of the world's economy. And I got into this because of the energy security perspective. I've always been a catalyst in one way or another in the Atlanta environmental community. And there is a tremendous opportunity for economic development. I worked with Don Francis at Clean Cities, Georgia for a number of years, and we had some really successful public-private initiatives to scale up some non-oil choice options for transportation. I worked at the City of Atlanta level with the City of Atlanta Mass Vehicle Adoption Initiative, and the name went on and on and on. And, you know, and I kind of re-engaged here because I have a relationship with Congressman Johnson that who Kala works with, and Congressman Bordeaux that are on transportation and infrastructure. And everything that all of you have accomplished in the last 8 years, you've done despite all of America's government non-initiatives. And we have a moment in time now where we have an administration that believes in science, and we have legislators that want to see this happen. And it begins at the top, that the president wants to see this happen. And I kind of got involved again because when I heard the president say, hey, we want to put 500,000 chargers out there, I know somebody that sells chargers was whispering in his ear that if you have an electric car, which I have had for 5 years, I've only charged in a public charging place twice. So if we want to see mass adoption of vehicles, we need the help. We have the wind at our back, and we need to find public partner initiatives, and we need help from Congress to put some legislation, and there's tons of good legislation in place already at the local, state, and federal level, but we need to envision some outcomes and figure out how do we bring those partnerships during quickly this first 4 years of the Biden administration that's certain, and start advancing that to get to mass adoption of electric vehicles.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Debbie?
I'm Debbie OHara, and I'm with Barber Wind Turbines. And our turbine is a new innovation. We're about halfway through our demonstration project in Kansas. But I'm on the call today, not because of the turbine so much as my interest in electric vehicles. I'd love to understand the model for EV, who owns what, who pays for what. And eventually, I'd like to get involved in having them be more quickly adopted.
Great. Regina?
Good morning. Thank you all so much for continuing to include us in this conversation. I'm Regina Maddox with Next Generation Manufacturing, and our organization connects manufacturers to share best practices, innovations, and resources. And of course, I always learn so much from these conversations. And I'm really here today to learn how manufacturers can fit into this. I know they're already a huge part of it, but as far as supply chain, partnerships, and production, you know, any of those access points for manufacturers are really what I'm interested in. And then the really cool stories that are happening. So thank you, Trevor and Guy and Jorge for continuing to include us.
Great. We've got Leah on the call. Leah, do you want to jump on or?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Shedrow. I'm here with Global Atlanta as an events coordinator. So if you come to our events, you probably see my emails. And this is a new topic for me, so I am here to learn.
Great. Thank you so much. And I think we have Kenji from the Consulate General of Japan. Kenji, are you on? Can you hear us? It's just the silence of Mount Fuji. Okay. All right, well, we'll jump into it. Maybe Kenji will want to jump in as we go. I know, of course, Japan plays a huge role in this sector with all the automotive companies and innovations that are coming out of it. But I guess I wanted to start potentially maybe with Marylyn and or Justin. I don't know, where are the bottlenecks here? And, you know, is charging infrastructure holding back adoption? I guess just to kind of set that out there as, you know, a challenge to the premise of the event. I mean, you know, Steve mentioned that he doesn't charge in public, and I'm curious as to where the infrastructure bottlenecks are to the adoption of EV. And maybe Justin, I don't know, can you drive throughout all the southern states and charge your car on the way?
So we do have go ahead, Justin, please.
No, Professor Brown, you can go ahead.
Okay. Well, you know, we do have maps of where the charging infrastructure is located by county, well, really zip code by zip code across the state. And when you plot it and look at urban versus rural, you see there is a very big divide. So clearly it's tough if you're in a rural county to charge an EV, which would be a significant barrier. So we've got to have more better distributed infrastructure. But even in urban areas, a colleague of mine, Omar Asensio, has an algorithm where he looks at comments made by people who are charging across America. And in looking at the data for Georgia by county again, you can see even in Atlanta, even where we have very dense charging, you have a lot of messages about, couldn't get on again. This guy wouldn't leave. This car's there. This, it's all, the charging stations are all booked and et cetera, expletive after expletive. So it's not all bad news, but clearly there is an infrastructure need even in the densely served populous areas of Georgia. So it's clearly an urban rural divide, but also when you look at where in Atlanta, trying to determine, I'm sure that there is a difference between the infrastructure density in high and low income areas. And of course, not many low income neighborhoods have EVs. So it's a little bit cart before the horse, but you don't want the infrastructure to be what's preventing greater distribution of this.
Yeah, I think that whole equity part of the conversation is going to come up for sure, and I want to come back to that. But I don't know, Justin, did you want to add anything? I mean, how does the South look? I mean, we have relatively less density than some other parts of the country, relatively more than some different ones. So I would imagine we're somewhat in the middle in that equation. But is density the issue? And how are the governments here thinking about energy efficient or EVs in terms of energy efficiency and what you do?
Yeah, I do echo Professor Brown's sentiments. It's when it comes to the urban areas, there are a good amount of charging. They can be very populated in certain parts of more wealthier parts of cities, but it is a matter of if the charging stations are operating at the time. What we don't want is drivers to drive to a station and then they come to find out that it's not operating properly. And that is a piece to the conversation when we talk about deploying it in the rural areas. I will say that there are some southern states who are doing good work. Florida, for example, is being very aggressive with the deployment of electric buses as well as charging infrastructure. The Florida DOT is working on an EV roadmap right now. And then in North Carolina, Duke Energy is submitting a phase 2 EV pilot programs with school buses, as well as fast charger deployments in their rural counties. And they're prioritizing their economically disadvantaged counties, as I've seen that charging can lead to some localized economic development, as we've even seen here in Georgia with Georgia Power's investment. So utilities, I think, are going to play a huge role in the equity conversation and getting it to areas that companies may not feel comfortable putting that investment just yet. Yeah, it's a large conversation that I think it's going to need a lot of moving parts moving simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, for me, there's a few questions there. One is, where do the property owners fit into this, and how do you, it seems to me that the charging infrastructure right now that is distributed is, here and there, like in parking decks, and a lot of times on parking facilities, and or at homes. So it's not necessarily like a gas station, right, where you can just pull in, fill up, and leave. So what parts of the equation need to be, I guess, tweaked? I don't know, maybe if Steve wants to come in on this, to make it where it's more like an experience that you're used to versus like having to go intentionally and find it, as we tend to do right now. And then I kind of want to also get into, where we are with the vehicles themselves, right? We have hybrids, we have plug-in hybrids, we have EVs, and, is there going to be a massive jump, a kind of full-scale transition, or is it going to continue to be, throughout the next 10 years or so, we're going to continue to have these intermediary steps?
Can I add something?
Sure, come on.
This is not the moonshot or the Mars mission. The question is, can I go to work in the morning and get home? The average American drives less than 50 miles a day.
Right.
If somebody has a car and they trickle charge from 110 outlet when they get home to when they leave in the morning, they don't need a charging station.
Right, right.
And I've been talking to Kala, and their office is saying, show me good policies at the state and the local and the state and the federal level that will support electric vehicles. It's happening. New homes have to be pre-wired. Not necessarily. You have to have the conduit to get a 240 to your garage. Apartment communities are doing the same thing, and they're mandated to put in, a certain number of chargers. But I have friends that are apartment developers that say the next project, I'm just going to make I'm just going to put the conduit in. The demand is rising. So, if people will charge at home, they don't, this is like, it's a different mentality. It's like a new exercise regime. And you have to switch how people are thinking to get past the range anxiety.
Right.
Because if you get, you plug in at night in 110, you don't need a charging station. You want to do a longer trip, then you have something to contend with.
Right. Go ahead, Guy.
That is pretty much true, Steve. But on the other hand, I've been to a few presentations when they talked about various employment development opportunities, such as Uber contributing electric vehicles to potential drivers in low economic areas, where this ability to charge on the go is a prohibiting factor, because they cannot distribute these vehicles that will create potential employment when there is no infrastructure for the drivers to actually use them. So that's the flip side of this argument. And just kind of, I wanted to, just wanted to mention that in the city of Peachtree Corners, Georgia, they just installed what is now Georgia's largest charging facility with 16 different chargers, 12 of them Tesla chargers, and another 4 that are different chargers that actually, at least from that side of town, does provide some solutions to the commercial areas there.
Guy, we don't disagree. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and solution.
Yeah, I was going to say that seems to me to be the dichotomy between commercial versus household, right? And it does seem that, or fleet-oriented businesses or government-run fleets versus the individual who's commuting every day. And I do think there are probably different applications for each of those. I don't know, Steve or Marylyn, maybe y'all want to jump in on that. And Marylyn, I'm curious about how this all affects the energy grid in particular. Like, how does it potentially enable new renewable forms if we have storage in the form of batteries that are being plugged in every night?
Right. So thinking ahead about the infrastructure requirements, I understand that we're going to be having at our fingertips here soon and have a Nissan Leaf that can go both ways, vehicle to home version or vehicle to grid, if you want to go back to a charge place at your work or what. Anyway, so in order to take full advantage of a vehicle to home mode, you really do need good home, better home infrastructure, and it's going to be probably not as affordable as, you know, just a trickle charge 110. You're going to have something more sophisticated. Also, of course, the full advantage of that system is going to require that you have solar panels on your rooftop, so you can charge at home and you can release that charge in the evening when the sun's down and you need more electricity, and of course driving it in between. So that model, which is not that many years away, is what we need to be developing our infrastructure to support.
Mm. Yeah, I was interested to see the Ford F-150 Lightning that came out. You know, they really made a big deal about, you know, how you could power your house, you know, in a potential power outage using the truck's battery that's been storing energy. Martin, you want to jump in and say something?
Yes, actually yesterday I just talked to one Taiwanese company that they are you know, producing the power charging station and also the cloud the battery operation system, so that they can build the charger at home, at the motel, hotel, or at the community, or at the mall or shopping center, so that in each charger will equip with the meter. So you know, you can just when you go to the mall, the hotel, you can just purchase the charging, and then or you can just use the like the code, and then just charging it immediately. So that and this company not only successful in Taiwan, so that now they also come to California. And yesterday I talked to them, and then they would like to come to Atlanta to visit, and we hope that they could also, you know, the partnership with some Georgia's company, and then to explore that kind of the charging you know, operation system.
I love that idea.
Yeah, this Jorge, Trevor, Tony, that would be a great opportunity. I think you and I have had discussions about, Guy mentioned Curiosity Lab over at Peachtree Corners. In addition to what Guy mentioned of the charging station, they just have a whole initiative about electrification and EV. So we will be glad to help you if they come to Atlanta to visit, to make an introduction to them. There might be some opportunities there. And the same thing for anybody on the call that is interested in visiting what they're doing there, let us know. We will help to orchestrate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, we will do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Andrew, I wanted to maybe bring you back in here, Consul General of the UK. You mentioned seeing this as an economic opportunity versus just an environmental pursuit. And I wondered if you could talk a bit more about that, maybe how it's been done in the UK, because I think that's really going to be the key, you know, to weaning these platforms off of public support and embedding them in the broader public.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Trevor. It's clear that the United Kingdom, in many respects, benefits from the fact that we don't have 50 separate states all looking at similar issues. So we've announced quite a lot of government support for charging infrastructure to be part of our, what we call our Prime Minister's 10-point green economic recovery revolution plan. That's a big word, that's not his title, but that's what it's trying to do. So we're looking at the moment at how do the UK really become net zero by 2050, but rather than having that as the target, how do we invest in the future of mobility moving forward? How do we move good peoples and services? So in a unitary state, if you leave aside some of the devolution aspects, government support can leverage private sector investment, and also private sector and government funded research and development about what works, what can we do in cities, how can we support that? And what you're seeing is that more and more charging is becoming available in the United Kingdom. I think we are quite a bit ahead in that respect. But we're also looking at that not just putting the charging infrastructure in, but looking at what are those alternative forms of energy. How do we move to a situation of ensuring that is it electric vehicles that are going to be the future? Is it going to be hydrogen powered? You know, how can we invest in that at the moment? But it's all about making those changes now that will ensure that by 2030, 2035, 2050, we're in the right space. So, for example, some of the things governments can do. So by 2030, there will be no new petrol, gas, or diesel cars or vans sold in the United Kingdom. And by 2035, we'll stop the sale of hybrid cars and vans as well. So that's something the government can do. So what we're doing is investing in our economy around that. But just to go back to my earlier point, yes, Georgia, Tennessee, the two Carolinas, Alabama, and Mississippi have to be looking at their charging, but they also have to be looking at how do we make the changes now so that we support industry in actually transforming what you said you write about all the time, Trevor, which is the automotive sector. How do we ensure that we're also providing the incentives for the Volvos, the BMWs, the Kias, to actually say that what they've experienced here can be that for the future. So in the United Kingdom, we're funding a lot of companies to carry out research, development, commercialization. And a big part of what I'm trying to do is to try and bring some of that technology to this part of the United States, because obviously supply chains are different in the electric vehicle world, assembly lines are different, but that investment needs to be starting to happen now. We're also supporting, and I think someone mentioned it earlier, I think it was John, you know, the development of giga battery factories in the United Kingdom. And if you look at what's happened in both Tennessee, where they're doing their driving the electric revolution work, but also in Georgia with SK Innovation, you're actually putting in place all of the production requirements that these companies can come in. And I think you need to now start looking at some of the talent aspects. So we're trying to, a little bit like my Taiwanese colleague, we're trying to ensure that the United Kingdom has a role to play in improving what the United States, which is a huge target market, is able to do. And these can be electric vehicles for US consumers, but if you look at the BMW experience with their X5, they're also exporting these vehicles internationally. So there's a real economic opportunity there. And what my hope is that I think we heard in our discussion when Pat Wilson was here, that companies are now saying to economic development teams across the US, what are you doing now to prepare for the future? What are you doing now to ensure that the electricity we're consuming is renewable, is not provided by fossil fuel development? So I think the economic development arguments and looking at it through that lens seems to be the one that works here. And we think there's two-way technology exchange, partnerships exchange, and skills exchange that help support that. But charging is a big aspect of this. Without the available charging, you don't want to create electrification deserts. Right. You know, so there's no point the roads from Florida east to west across the US being full of chargers if the interstates that go through Alabama and Mississippi don't have the same charging infrastructure. So you will need intrastate cooperation. And I think you've heard me say before, Trevor, that that's the one thing that I find most challenging, is that quite often states focus on this on a state-by-state level, and there's less collaboration between states to see how do we create those interstates of the future, for example.
Yeah, I would imagine that's where Steve would say it's great that the federal government is now looking at this, because obviously we saw the compromise infrastructure deal come through with, you know, it says 1.2 trillion in spending, but I think it's $579 billion of new spending. Hasn't been voted on, obviously, but does have dedicated money in there for EV charging infrastructure, and maybe that's one area where the federal government can play a role of papering over those differences among the states, and at least having some kind of a national network. I don't know, Steve, do you want to talk about that at all? I saw Justin also nodding your head about the state-to-state cooperation aspect. Maybe you want to address that. Steve, you want to start and then go to Justin?
Well, you know, it's just, I mean, Clean Cities has been working since the 80s on public-private partnerships. And, you know, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit now. And I think that's what we need to be looking in, whether it's residential or it's return to base businesses or it's government vehicles. You know, there's just a lot of opportunity and low-hanging fruit. And then, you know, let's get, because like I said, a lot of this is behavioral to overcome it for the purchase, for the private owners. You know, the automobile dealers, they see the future. And, you know, for them, they, you know, for this to be successful, their customer experience has to, you know, it has to be positive and it has to exceed expectations. And if they're properly encouraged with tax incentives at the time of purchase and tax incentives to do a charger at home, and for companies to do charging at home and airlines to do charging at the airport and transport buses to do it and senior citizen homes to do it, you know, it gets better, it gets healthier, it makes the city healthier.
Great. And Justin, did you want to jump in on the state cooperation aspect? I just find it interesting that you look at a region versus just one state.
Yeah, and actually SIA is not the only one. We are one of 5 or 6 regional energy efficiency organizations, divided the country into different sections. But speaking to Steve's earlier point, Clean Cities through the Department of Energy is an opportunity to kind of keep that coordination going. And speaking more through the Federal Highway Administration, through the FAST Act, they were deploying signage for alternative fuels. But a lot of the states will do what they can within their own borders, but there should be a little more coordination of, well, if we put this charging station at point A, where can we put at point B over the border? Consistent, because now what we're seeing is different gaps because of that. And I will say South Carolina is a good example of the signage that they've done, but from a federal perspective, if we can kind of continue to capitalize on that, that signage deployment and kind of seeing where we can identify those gaps and those priority gaps.
Yeah,
it'd be critical.
Does anyone know, Regina asked this question through the chat. I thought it was an interesting one. She said, does Georgia have a published roadmap or plan like the one Florida was mentioned to have? Are there plans to, you know, connect the 4 quadrants of the state to alleviate some of the charging anxiety? And, you know, I think that's an interesting question because, you know, just personally thinking about driving an EV, I mean, I would be happy to drive it in town. I'd be a bit worried if I was out on the highway, you know, like I think that's, you know, and so it depends on the type of business that you're in. It depends on where you see yourself going. I mean, my father-in-law travels all over Georgia, and I'm not sure at this point he'd be happy to be in an EV because he'd be worried about running out of charge on the interstate. So.
And Trevor, that's why I asked the question, because you know how my days are, and I know that I do see a lot of charging stations around the metro area and other outlying areas. But I would be concerned, and I'm not picking on Albany because that's not a good example, but just for example, driving from North Georgia to Albany and back for the day, that would just be something I would be curious about.
Yeah, and I think this is maybe where manufacturers could have a role too, because you know, they could be, I'm sure they already are becoming charging points for their own employees, and that could potentially open up. Justin's posted a map, EV road map for Florida. Does anybody know whether there's one or there's a similar plan in Georgia?
So I have a Tesla. This is really more an iPad on wheels than it is a car. And this is all about data. And all of the data is there. And if you're driving a Tesla and you're doing a trip and you put your destination in, it tells you where the charging stations are. If I didn't want to do that, the Department of Energy has an app that I can put on my phone that would give me the same information, not for Tesla, but for every commercially available charger, be it at a restaurant or a hotel or an office building. So all the data exists. This is what I get a little frustrated because all of the components are already out there for the easy part. The harder part, going cross country, it's a little bit of a challenge now, and everybody thinks they're going to get the phone call tomorrow morning that they got to drive to California. And
true,
that doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, and I think that comes in where we talk about models and who owns what and everything, because I think people are increasingly realizing that they don't need to, for one, they don't need to drive to California, but like there's even these kind of ideas around mobility that I don't even need to own a car potentially. I can rely on Uber or some third party to get me where I need to go, and I think those are going to be the discussions that we get into going down the road, no pun intended. I'm curious, do y'all know, maybe Marylyn, do you know whether there is a universal standard for charging now, or are we going to be beholden to each particular OEM's charging cables? I mean, is it going to be the Apple Lightning cable all over again?
Definitely does not exist now, but it's being hotly debated.
Yeah, I could see that being a great coalescing factor, because I mean, you can go to any gas station and fill up as long as it's unleaded, right? If you're driving your normal car. So, and do we know whether the major energy players, they've all announced some kind of sustainability strategy. Anybody who knows more about this than me, do you know whether they are actually talking about installing any charging infrastructure at their existing, say, gas stations now? I mean, I know that would sort of cannibalize their existing sales potentially, but everybody sees the writing on the wall. So I would imagine, one of their advantages is having that physical infrastructure that everybody can see and is present in neighborhoods. Are they thinking about this?
There's no comparison between a gas station and a charging station, even though many charging stations on interstates are happening at gas stations because they already have excess land. But even a fast charge, it's kind of a misnomer. If you used, my car does 220 miles. It takes 40 minutes to charge. It's not like filling up your, your car with gas and making a pit stop and getting a drink and leaving. So gas stations, it's really not the model. It needs to be where you are for a period of time, whether it's a hotel, whether it's an office building, or if you are doing a road trip, easily accessible to the interstate. But it's not a gas station.
Sounds like Starbucks should get into EV business to me. Stop and have your coffee and charge up.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, Sergio, I noticed you posted a couple of things. You want to talk about what you just put in the chat?
That's just the latest and greatest. Obviously, we're monitoring what Electrify America is up to, and they're adding more to that count of charging stations in the state. Listen, it's something that's growing. It's a bit of a moving target, but there are more and more developments that come up as we grow in this area. To the points that were made earlier about what's happening with the OEMs in our neighborhood, and when I say in our neighborhood in the greater Southeast, I mean VW's push is significant. And I don't know if you guys also caught the announcement in South Carolina. Volvo's plant in the Low Country will start making the Polestar line. Again, this is another brand that is owned by a Chinese-owned Geely. So you'll have the S60 and the XC90 rolling off the line. Some of their best sellers, but the Polestar is a Tesla killer. I mean, this thing is sporty, it's sexy, it's supposed to appeal to that kind of consumer. So we're talking about VW. We should talk about BMW. They're trying to electrify their SUV fleets. In the last 10 to 20 years, the SUV in plant Spartanburg in South Carolina has been the plant that has made the greatest profits. It's the largest plant in their network globally. BMW, as you all know, is America's leading exporter of cars by value. They hope to continue that. I mean, they do very well with the X3 model and the X5 model, as you know, but in addition to that, it's the X3, it's the X4, it's the X5, 6, 7, and there are even talks about an X8, which would be a monstrosity. I've seen pictures of it. It doesn't belong on the road. In any event. And so then you pivot and you look at what's happening in plant vans for Mercedes. They've discontinued the production of the C-Class to think about, well, not even to think about, but to implement a strategy for the production of their EQ series. So the EQ is their line of electric vehicles, right? You know, higher end SUVs that I start to see on the streets here. So
it's not to mention Kia Hyundai, you know, which announced $7.4 billion investment in the electric vehicle transition, which, you know, maybe you give us the scoop, Sergio, I don't know, but could end up trickling quite a bit down to the Georgia plant. I don't know if they've said for sure whether they're manufacturing the all electric vehicles here in Georgia, but
and you know, they have a network.
Hoping and crossing our fingers.
Yeah, they have a network of assembly.
I think they'll end up 1 foot here, 1 foot there, put it exactly on the state line. Half of the plant in Alabama, half of the plant in Georgia, and everybody's going to be happy. Already. But another angle to that is the whole, because for instance, we know that Bluebird is starting to develop electric school buses, and the whole things with public transportations, with light rail and BRTs and all these type of mobility solutions that are all looking to electric solutions. So I think, and by the way, we have reached the hour mark. As usual, we will not stop talking until everyone goes away. So if you need to leave at 12 exactly, then it was nice having you. And if we still have something to talk about, we'll continue.
Sergio, I think you were going to mention something about Bluebird.
Yeah, so Bluebird, it's not that they're thinking about developing, they are already selling these things to school districts. I would also like to bring up, there's another bus company in South Carolina, Proterra, which 10 years ago was on the verge of going bankrupt. And a couple of weeks ago, they were listed on the stock exchange. Just think about how things have changed just in the last few years. And with that, you have coach builders that are also coming to the greater Southeast. I direct you to, of course, Van Hool, which is a Belgian bus company that is in Tennessee, right? They're also thinking about electric solutions for their clients. So it goes beyond, you know, passenger vehicles, it's commercial vehicles, industrial vehicles, and it's something that we certainly have to be prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, there's all the startups in the truck sector as well, Rivian and Lordstown and all these companies that are raising an amazing amount of money. We haven't even touched on the commercial trucking sector, which had a lot of investment early on. I'm not sure how it's doing right now, and then, you know, we haven't touched on the intersection between EV and autonomy, you know, autonomous vehicles as well. But Martin, I think you may want to talk about the Foxconn platform. I'd be interested.
I just like to add some comment that regarding to Bluebird. Bluebird, you know, they produce low emission propane gas school bus. But now this year they start to produce. Up to now, they already produce 500 electric school bus. And another company in North Carolina, High Point, called Thomas Build Bus. They also team up with Proterra to produce electric school bus. And now they just they already produce 50 electric school bus, and now they just receive you know, the 324 the pieces of orders from Maryland school district. So even the school bus, also move into this EV industry.
Yeah. I wanted to bring, sorry, Steve, I wanted to bring in Ash real quick. I think he had something he wanted to mention, then we'll come back to Steve. I know you dropped something in the chat, Ash, but I don't know if you wanted to expand beyond that.
Yeah, sure. No problem. And I did just drop it in the chat. So New Flyer has been a longtime supplier of buses to MARTA. They're based in Manitoba. And earlier this year, I think just after the turn of the year, MARTA purchased 6, I think, EV buses with plans to buy more to expand their fleet. So it's definitely happening. We've noticed that there's a lot more engagement percolating at the state level, at the city level more so than the state level. As we've seen as they've been engaging with the consulate. We've had a great partnership with the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association based in Toronto, and there's a gentleman up there named Warren Ali that heads a project called Project Arrow that is all EV all the time, 24/7. And he's just a fantastic source of knowledge, but we've been able to connect him with both South Carolina and Tennessee because they reached out to us just to get ideas on how to flesh out their EV markets and their infrastructure. And just based on that conversation, we learned that Tennessee has plans to have EV charging stations every 50 miles on interstate and state highways throughout the entire state. And for those of you that have driven from east to west through Tennessee, that's a long stretch of highway. Yeah. So to have stations every 50 miles is a fantastic opportunity and goal for them to meet. So it's happening. A lot of times not with a lot of fanfare, unfortunately, but you know, that's up to us to push it. So we'll continue to do it and engage with any and all partners that are willing.
I know that Quebec has a manufacturer called Lion that's doing a lot on the electric bus side too. But
that's right.
You know, to your point about Tennessee, you know, they just got a big announcement from LG, right? SK's Korean crosstown competitor, who's going to be building a huge plant, I think in partnership with GM in Tennessee, billions of dollars of investment there. So yeah, I mean, it's happening. Steve, did you want to say something about?
I just wanted to piggyback what Marylyn had said about whether there was the question you had asked, Trevor, is there a standard plug? Is there?
Right. Yeah, that's a good.
And the answer is no, that there's several different plugs out there, but the OEMs can make it easier, that there's adapters that can fit on whatever it is they provide you. You can get an adapter to fit any of the charging stations that are out there. I stopped at a gas station on the way to Hilton Head, and there was a Tesla charger, a Georgia Power charger, and a third-party charger. And I could have used any with the adapters that I have. And that's what the OEMs need to do to make for a positive, you know, customer experience. And we know this is a chicken and egg situation. And we've come a long way. Yeah. And, you know I keep going, let's, you know, the more we make people aware. I love the conversations that I have with people because they're, like I say, it's a behavioral shift.
Right.
Make that behavioral shift. It's really nice not going to gas stations.
Yeah, I can definitely foresee that. I mean, I think I see some parallel with I've written a lot about the financial technology sector and the way that payment platforms get adopted, right? It takes both sides of the coin. Debbie, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to ask a question about just the model. Like, who will own all the charging stations? Is there a charge to fill up? Who sets the prices for the electricity? Is it something like a Sun Pass that, you know, once you've filled up, you just get a monthly bill? Is it something that you pay, or do you not pay for the electricity? In which case, who eats those costs?
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. So anybody else?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
All right,
Steve, I'd love to know: is your EV your only vehicle?
So Georgia Power actually offers a special EV charging program, if you will charge between 11 o'clock at night and 7 in the morning, when they're continuing to produce power from their plants that just goes out on the grid, it's not used. Marilyn Brown would love this. I'm sorry she's not here. This is a tremendous boost for energy efficiency because that energy would just be wasted and Georgia Power would earn nothing for it. So I pay 1.4 cents per kilowatt hour. Between those hours, I charge my car, I run my air conditioning, I could do my laundry, and last month that cost me about $8.
Mm.
I'm not making an economic case for a Tesla, but you know, I'm just saying that there's ways where the utility company wants you to do this because it helps them.
Mm.
And that's why they're at the table as a stakeholder to help make this happen. And they can work with businesses that say you're return to base, you're doing HVAC or plumbing, and you've got vehicles returning to base. Same kind of thing. They can charge at night at a lower rate and spend much less on the power to run the car. Also, every single alternative fuel that powers a vehicle runs cleaner and there's less maintenance on all the vehicles.
Yeah, that's
Marta will tell you that.
Especially for fleet customers.
Yeah, so there's just so many advantages, but you know, and then the you know, pay-as-you-go stations, they each charge differently. They're data-driven. The first time you use one of them, it's a pain in the neck. You gotta, just like, you know, Trevor's talking about the financial apps, you have to do the same thing. You have to fill everything out. You have to start over. But the next time you plug in, they know you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you do pay as you know, like you said, pay as you go. You pay at the, but some, you know, places offer it as an incentive, I think too. I think that's part of a model too, like come park at my lot versus another lot because I've got this here, you know, or I've seen them at Perimeter Mall, for instance, like come, you know, park here, charge while you shop, right? So I don't know if every single one of them is pay as you go as much as it is sometimes used.
Stay at my hotel.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think
you pay one way or the other.
yeah, for sure.
No free lunch.
The company I talked to yesterday, he told me that you know, for instance, the home charger, you know, each month they have a program that say that each month $20. Then that's all. So it'll be easy. And since most of the electric vehicle owner will be charging mostly at home, and so that if you pay $20 every month, then that is a lot cheaper than you have to add the gasoline
right.
know, every month.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that equation expands depending on how far you have to commute and all these things. And I think the interesting piece we're gonna, you know, we might have to get into a different call for this, but you know, home, you know, what is charging at home look like, right? There's some of us that have garages, there's some of us that don't, right? And you know, I've lived at all different stages in Atlanta, and it's not until my latest house that I would even have the option of charging at home. You know, there was really no infrastructure, no way to connect my existing home to what, you know, no thought about it from the HOA, you know, just I would just have to wait until I graduate to a certain point. So I think that's where the public infrastructure is going to come into play, and making that more accessible to people either in their apartment complexes or closer on the street, things like that.
Hey, Trevor, on that point, I live in a high rise in Midtown, and we didn't have it, but it's the HOA has made it very available. They will work with you. Of course, you have to pay for the installations, but through the 6th floor of the parking or 7th floor of the parking, they will facilitate the installation. I've seen it from Tesla or the Georgia Power or the other guys. So that's becoming more common from that perspective.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting too to look at this whole rural urban situation as well. I think, I think there are some electric tractors out there now. So the more of those we get out there in the world, I think it'd be interesting to see how that, you know, translates to, EVs and all that. So I think we probably need to end it, guys. Guy, do you agree? If so, I want to thank everybody for being here. And I really like the fact that this kicked off a lot of questions and discussion. And, you know, we'll all be watching this sector going forward. And
yeah, I think we have enough information to do another one just on EVs.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, there's much more to be discussed. And I'm particularly fascinated by the international aspect of this and how we can collaborate with various countries around the world. So thank y'all again. I look forward to seeing y'all at the next one. And maybe we'll do it half in person. We'll see. I don't know. We'll talk to Guy and Jorge about that. Talk to y'all soon.
I hope so. This was good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Bye.
Thank you, Trevor.